All right, this video is all about removing an object from its background in Photoshop, a task that you're going to have to do a lot as you're creating graphics. Now, there's some double-edged swords in trying to remove an object from the background. The one thing you really need to remove objects from the background is contrast, right? The computer can give you some help in contrast. Again, your vision is way better than a computer vision. So I'm going to look at this problematic image. There's a lot of good contrast right here, right? This red and this black, that's great contrast. This red hat, on the other hand, not as good contrast, right? It's going to struggle a little more, but we're going to try to leverage as much of the computer doing it, but I'll show you some touch-up techniques as well. So I'm in Photoshop, and if you've never used Photoshop before, everything is on these layers, right? We have different layers, and right now this is just a JPEG image, so there's only one background image layer. And we need to remove this dog in a hat. So over here we have a couple of choices for tools to help us select an object. Now this is a brand new one to Adobe, to Photoshop, called Select Object, or Select, is it called? Object Selection Tool. So if I just go ahead and do that, I just drag out. Notice it did a pretty good job. It got most of our dog. It's using a little bit of artificial intelligence to do this. Now, it didn't get this. Well, what if I need to add that? Well, there's key modifiers. If you hold Shift, you can add to a selection. If you hold Option, you can subtract from a selection. So I'm going to hold Shift and just kind of draw out there. And I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to draw out here. Maybe even this little thing here. Now, if I needed to subtract from a selection, I would have held right, negative, or Option, I'm sorry. But let's go back here, right? We need to make sure we have all these things, and so I'm trying to get it to do a good job here. Now, that's one way to start selecting it. Now, we haven't knocked it out yet. That's okay. Well, we could stop here. Maybe this did a great job, and we love it. What do we do to separate this from our background? And so probably the best thing to do here is to create what's known as a layer mask. And so what you do is there's this little button right here that looks like a rectangle with a circle out. And I hit that, and now notice it changed the background a little bit. It took away that background layer, because now this is what transparency is in Photoshop. It's this pattern here. But if I zoom in and I'm hitting Command plus, just like you've done in InDesign, you'll notice that it's not very good of a selection. So we probably don't want to do that. I'm going to go up to the history palette up here and go back before I made the layer mask. Now, this object selection tool is not the only show in town. There's this quick selection tool. So notice when you have a selection, it has what's called the dancing ants. If you want to get rid of that selection, you can say select, deselect. You can hit what I always do, which is Command D. And this tool right here, the quick selection tool, anywhere I click on, it'll start trying to find pixels that are related in color, right? So this all, again, goes by color and contrast and everything, where I'm trying to do that. If I wanted to, now notice up here, I have this plus on, so I didn't actually have to hold Shift. If you had the regular tool, you could hold Shift and Option, but notice these tools also have automatically subtract and do there. So that's another way, and you see we've pretty much done exactly what we did in the object tool. Now, instead of just going to a mask, what I'm going to do is actually, and you could have done this from the object selection tool too, and notice there's this select subject tool, which works pretty much like the object selection, except for it just tries to guess. It's probably better to use the object select tool. So I'm going to hit select and mask, and that's going to bring me into this new dialog box here where I see things a little bit differently. And so I'm going to zoom in and look at this real garbage edge here that we have. And so how do we fix that? Well, our first thing might be to go over to this edge. Well, actually, before I do this, you're going to notice you have up top in this window, you can change how you view it. So you can see the background that is the rest of the image by changing this transparency. You can change the mode to see it on black, right? So now it's really apparent where this red is coming in. You could change it to do on white. I say those are probably your best bets, to look at it black and white to see how it's doing. So how do I fix it? I'm going to move right down this palette here and go to this edge detection. And I'm going to drag this up a little bit and try to let it suss it out a little bit. It maybe hit Smart Radius. You'll see what it does is it kind of does some work. Still not great. So what I'm actually going to do is come over here to this palette that's in this dialog box. And right here is the Refine Edge brush tool that I'm going to select. And now with your left and right arrows, you can change, or not arrows, I'm sorry, brackets. With your left and right brackets, you can change the size. And you don't want a huge size edge tool, right? You don't want it to fool into the background or anything. This image only has red in the background, but other images might have trees and stuff in the background, so you want to be very careful there. And I'm just going to draw over the edge a little bit. I'm going to make that a little bigger and try to get it to start picking up all this hair of this dog. And notice, so I'm starting to get this hair here. Now, once you release, it kind of runs the algorithm and makes it better. If you want to see where you've already drawn these edges, up here in the top, there's this show edge, right? And so we can kind of see, we see that the radius edge that I had picked here, right, didn't do a great job, didn't do it enough. So it's probably better just to go ahead and, with a fur at least, do it this way, right? Because we're going to see places in this dog, and let's go to, let me turn off the edges, and let me go back to regular viewing mode, this onion skin mode. See, we have these wisps of hair here. So I'm going to go ahead and make my border radius a little smaller and just actually draw right on these wisps right here. And can't really see anything yet, but when I show edges, you'll see that I did that. Right, and now I'll go back to white so that you can see I have these hairs here. And so that's the process right there. You just kind of have to sit there and do the edges. This is going to be a little more problematic here. Now notice I'm going to do this. It's not doing a very good job. It's messing it up. This is going to need to be, because of the low contrast of the red background, the red hat, we're going to need to do with this something different. So we'll go to that one last, and I'll give you this image to do. But let's look at something, though, that's going on. So first of all, notice there's this red here. So we want to kind of do this to get it to do that. If we don't have this, we can actually paint what we keep and what we don't keep. So there's this brush tool, and if I want to add, if I want to subtract, I'll click up here, right? And I'll just really just draw, get rid of what I don't want to draw. Now, I don't usually do this here. I actually do this in the mask mode, and I'll show you that in a second. But there was just some red there, right, that I need to go. This knocking out can just take some time. So notice, though, one thing about this is that there's this red fringe all the way around. And so what we want to do is come over here to this global refinements and maybe just play a little bit with the shifting the edge to bring it down a little bit. Now see how it's kind of eating into there. There's another little thing in the output settings where it says decontaminate colors. You can click that as well. That'll try to help you get rid of, say, if there's a different fringe color on there, we call it. And this is pretty good. So now what do I do with it? Now, of course, the hat's still terrible, but I know it's a lost cause using this tool. So what do I do with this now? Well, the output settings is what it matters. Output to. And so where do you want to output it to? A new layer, a mask, a new document, layer mask. I'm going to suggest using this new layer with layer mask, okay? So we're going to click that, hit OK. And that will bring us this new layer here with still the original layer back there just turned off, right? I could turn this on and off. But this is a mask. And so what that does is anything that is black is hidden, anything that is white is shown, and anything that's grayscale is, depending if it's darker, it's more transparent. If it's lighter, it's less transparent. So I could use this mask with a brush tool. So I'm going to hit B on my keyboard to jump to the brush tool, which is over here. And I'm still using my left and right brackets here. And now you have to, this is one of the confusing things. Notice down here in the palette, or in the layers, I'm clicking between two things. If I have this selected and I go to draw, I'm drawing over that and ruining the image. I don't want to do that. I'm going to hit Command Z. I'm going to make sure I have the layer mask selected. And you can draw with any grayscale in this. It won't let you have a color. That's another way you can sometimes know you're in this. And if I was to draw with black, notice that would take away stuff. I'm going to hit Command Z. If I draw with white, right, so you have to have whichever one right here on top, right, it would add this. So I can, right, clean up the system by just very carefully doing that. Same thing where I want to get rid of some of this, this red here. Well, maybe I'm going to go ahead and use a black here and just gently, very carefully, you know, do some work trying to get this to look a lot better. You know, I might make a very small brush. I'm just doing this very roughly right now. I'm just trying to make things look a little cleaner. And now I might need to do other things. I might need to go back to the actual image and do something like to get rid of this red. Maybe since this is on black, I could get away with desaturating. So there's actually a tool called the sponge tool where I would be able to desaturate. And this is just because it's black and white. So you notice I'm removing some of this red cast as I pass over it. That may not work in every situation, obviously. Maybe you'll have to do something else. The real way a real professional designer would do this hat, though, is probably not to use the brush. We generally use the pen tool. So this is the pen tool right here, and we saw these pen tool with right when we talked about Beziers. And this is a lot harder. I don't expect you to know how to do this. I just want to let you know how, say, a professional would do this, where I would kind of painstakingly draw a very nice, smooth approximation of this. So this is a two-handed operation. As I'm drawing, I'm sometimes holding down Option to break the handles, right? And so I'll make this nice and smooth, and then eventually I'll get all the way around it, and it'll close. Now, right now, that's what's called a path. So you see this path, I created this thing called a work path. I'm going to hit Command-Enter to turn it into a selection. I could have also gone over here and said make selection. Yeah, that's fine. And now I'll just go ahead and go back into my mask. And I want to show this stuff, so I'm going to use white, and I'm going to paint it all in here. And what I'm going to do with my selection is actually invert the selection. So select, inverse, and now I'll switch back to black, right, and paint out this. And so I'm going to deselect by hitting Command D. And so what I will have done is made a nice smooth edge for this thing to be knocked out. Now that obviously takes a lot of time. I'm not going to go through doing that. I'm just letting you know all the ways that you can knock something out. Once you have it knocked out, right, I would obviously save it as a PSD file because it can no longer be a JPEG file. So I'm going to say save as a, right, I'm just going to save it. It's going to save as a Photoshop file. Hit save. Say sure. I can get rid of this background image. I'm just going to drag that layer into the trash. Now, know that this mask is what's known as non-destructive editing. So I can at any time get any of that information in that image back by using the mask. I can also completely delete the mask if I just drag that to the trash down here, right? Do I apply it? If I apply it, it'll cut those pixels. But I'll just say no, just delete it. And so I'm back there. I'm going to hit Command Z to go back there, right? So there I have an image that I have knocked out.